Okay, UFC 271 pay-per-view card. This is a fun card from top to bottom. We've got 15 fights to get through. I'll try to be a little bit more concise than usual just because of time's sake for 15 whole fights. I can't expect that all of these fights are going to stay intact as the week goes on. I'm sure some fight week funny business will take place, canceling at least a few of these fights. But either way, I'm happy to get into it. First, let's just take a little look at the results from last week. Pretty much a break-even night. Once again, we had plus 0.8 units at the end of it, which stemmed mostly from two parlays, which was Sean Strickland and Julian Erosa, which cashed. But then I also had Sean Strickland and Dennis Bondar, which did not. Dennis Bondar got injured in round one, the very first fight of the night. That was heartbreaking. But some of the straight picks that came through: Brian Battle as an underdog, Philip Rowe as a closely lined fight, Hakeem Dawodu came through, Marc-Andre Barriault did not. That was a loss there. And then the props, 2 wins, 2 losses on props. Alexis Davis by decision came through, Julian Erosa by decision came through. Danilo Marquez, just a fraction of a unit at plus 800 on that, did not come through. And Jason Witt versus Philip Rowe, I had the over 1.5, which was seconds from cashing. Philip Rowe got a little bit trigger happy there and lost that prop. But overall, made profit, so I can't complain on that. Total picks for last week were 8 and 5. A lot of underdogs came through, so we'll see if that trend continues to this week. Let's get into all 15 of these fights. Okay, first fight of the night, we have a newcomer in Mike Mathisa, also known as Blood Diamond. I'm actually not even sure. I think a lot of us are wondering if they're actually going to announce his name as Blood Diamond or if they're actually going to call him Mike Mathisa. But he comes out of City Kickboxing. He's one of Israel Adesanya's training partners down there. So every one of these pay-per-view cards these days seems to have like one of the main event fighters' buddies just comes with them and makes their debut out of nowhere. So this guy's a legitimate kickboxer. Great traditional kickboxing technique. Pretty tall frame for the division too. He's 5'11", 74.5-inch reach, and he's had just a few tune-up MMA fights against nobodies to try to get his feet wet in the game. And this is a kind of a tough ask for him to come out here against Jeremiah Wells. Jeremiah Wells recently came and made his debut in the UFC, taking on Warley Alves and just cutting through him like a hot knife to butter. So this is kind of a tough ask for Mike Mathisa, or Blood Diamond in this spot. Somebody with such great kickboxing technique, but Jeremiah Wells looks great on the feet too. I mean, Jeremiah Wells is coming out of CES, CFFC, 2 legitimate promotions, facing pretty good competition, and now he just defeated a UFC caliber guy in Warley Alves, looking very, very impressive. Early round 2 stoppage there, so that guy is legitimate on the ground. He's kind of like an equal opportunity winner. He's got decision wins, knockouts from strikes, and some submission wins too. I think he's a legitimate black belt in BJJ as well. So Mike Mathisa, I mean, the clear path to victory against kickboxers, take him out of his element, take him to the ground, and finish him there. So I could see Wells getting this done early inside the distance. I don't know if I'd want to get cute and try to pick submission versus strikes in that one. I might just pick Wells inside the distance. I could see it being one of those situations where Wells gets into the ground, unloads ground and pound, and it could either be a finish by strikes in 10 seconds or a finish by rear naked choke in 20 seconds. So I'm just going to call Jeremiah Wells inside the distance. Okay, up next, the bantamweight bout between Douglas Silva de Andrade versus Sergey Morozov. And this is a fun fight. It should be kind of a striker versus grappler fight, except for Morozov is actually pretty competent on the feet as well, as we've seen. He's coming from the M1 Global regional scene in Russia. Did very, very well there. Came in against Umar Nurmagomedov, a forgivable loss. He was finished in that fight, then comes back against Khalid Taha and, kind of absolutely dominated him. But so we're kind of seeing a spot where he comes to the UFC on a high streak on the regional scene. We kind of see him overshoot. It was a tough ask in Nurmagomedov. He comes back against Khalid Taha, somebody more, on his level, gets a win. So we're trying to figure out where his ceiling is. And Douglas Silva de Andrade is kind of another good spot to do that because this guy only loses to the top guys. I mean, he's only losing to, who's he lost to? Rob Font. We're talking Peter Yan. We're talking, who's the last one that he's lost to recently? And Lerone Murphy. So another guy that's, a tough ask and a forgivable loss. So, I mean, between those 3 losses in the past few years, I mean, not that bad. I mean, then wins over Marlon Vera, Renan Barao, and Gaetano Perillo. He just got a nice finish. So the guy's powerful for 135. Very good striker, good striking accuracy over his UFC career. The only thing is he's 36 years old and at a bantamweight weight class that's just starting to get up there in age where, you know, we're looking at maybe a decline in performance coming soon. 5'7", 68-inch reach. The comeback on Morozov, 5'6", 67-inch reach. So not too far off in size. The one thing that I do like about Sergey Morozov, though, is the fact that he actually goes to the grappling often. You saw the Khalid Taha fight. He landed like half a dozen takedowns in that fight, was relentless and competent on the feet as well. So in this fight, I can see the most likely path is mixing in the takedowns and being just good enough on the feet and avoiding danger against the power of Silva de Andrade. So if he can do that, I think he wins the fight. I think just a well-rounded mix of a game plan. I think he wins the fight by decision. Now, the line on this fight, plus 175 Silva de Andrade and minus 220 for Morozov currently. I think that's a little bit ridiculous. I think that the experience edge warrants a little bit more of a price tag. It should be a closer line fight. If you were underdog hunting on this card, I think a good underdog pick is Silva de Andrade. Unfortunately, at 36 years old, I don't think I'm going to get there betting-wise at only plus 175. If that line gets a little bit higher of an underdog price, I might take it if it was like plus 200 or so. Fight doesn't go to decision is around minus 160, and these guys have a lot of finishes in both their wins and their losses. So that might be a good spot. But again, at bantamweight, I don't know about the power. Yeah, I could see Silva de Andrade with the power advantage here. I'm not sure if Morozov has that same finishing ability against a crafty striker like Silva de Andrade. So minus 160, might take a stab when that fight doesn't go to decision, but my overall pick is Sergey Morozov by decision. Okay, interesting fight up next. Middleweight bout between Jacob Malkoun and AJ Dobson. Very excited for AJ Dobson to make his debut here. The guy's an absolute monster. He's coming off of the regional scene. I mean, if you watch this guy's regional scene footage, it just absolutely blows you away. He kind of reminds me of a Chaos Williams. Just absolute power in both hands. Great combinations against the cage. Great knees. He mixes in with his 1-2s down the middle. The guy's just an absolute machine. And, you know, he has some finishes by submission. His last fight on the Contender Series, he finished by rear naked choke. The only reason it got to the ground is because he kept on knocking down his opponent with just vicious strikes against the cage. And eventually, when he just couldn't get him out of there by strikes, the guy basically just gave up and just gave up his neck. So that's how that fight went. The guy's an absolute monster. I wish that we were able to see more of his defensive and offensive grappling, but he just finishes his fights too fast for us to really see that. So that's the gamble. Jacob Malkoun, on the other hand, this guy is the training partner of Robert Whitaker. Another reason why he's on this card. He made his debut against Phil Hawes, got absolutely destroyed in round 1. Came back against Abdul Razak Al Hassan, which is a good step for this fight because he was able to play the matador against Razak Al Hassan, avoid the heavy strikes, employ a bunch of takedowns, and win a decision. Now, he could definitely employ that same game plan against AJ Dobson if he survives. But AJ Dobson, for a guy who has a lot of finishes in the first round, a lot of quick finishes, he doesn't look to tire out. He was able to unload a fury of strikes in his Contender Series fight, and he didn't look to be slowing down very much at all and throwing with absolute power. And I think the reason for that is if you look at where he trains at Strong Style MMA, and their strength conditioning is extreme out of Columbus, Ohio there. Some of the standouts from that gym, Matt Brown, Stipe Miocic. So, I mean, he's got great training partners, great strength conditioning. The guy's an absolute machine. The only thing is now it's at the line is about to flip. It's at minus 110, minus 115 for each guy. Complete 50-50 pick 'em from a gambling standpoint. If this flips in the next couple days, and there has been money pouring in on Jacob Malkoun, which, you know, for good reason, he's got the experience edge. But if it flips for plus money for AJ Dobson, I will make a bet on this fight. I think that his power and his tenacity is a little bit too much for Jacob Malkoun to handle for a 15-minute bout. I think AJ Dobson comes in and absolutely smokes him in round 1. But for me to take a stab in such a a trust in a newcomer, I'm going to have plus money on that. So I'm going to wait for this line to flip before I place a bet. But my prediction's AJ Dobson, round 1, inside the distance. Okay, up next, Carlos Ulberg returns, taking on Fabio Charron. And I like this fight in a peculiar way. I mean, both guys I don't have a lot of trust in. This is a very sketchy fight. Fabio Charron has a lot of tools that he should be employing. I mean, the guy's got like a good grappling game, doesn't really go for it that often, doesn't really attempt takedowns, kind of just lumbers and has decent forward pressure, but he really whiffed his Contender Series debut a few years ago against Alexa Kamer, got finished, didn't really attempt any grappling in that, went back to the regional scene, ended up facing Myron Dennis and winning the 205 strap in LFA. And, you know, it was impressive at the time against a young guy taking on Myron Dennis, who is a journeyman veteran, and he was the reigning champion. He was able to pressure him over 5 rounds and win that fight. So at the time, it was impressive. He gets the call to the UFC, filling in last minute. I think against Alonzo Menafield at the time. That looked horrible. He got submitted by a Von Flue choke, which at this level he probably shouldn't get submitted by, but he goes back in there against William Knight and gets knocked out in round 1. So his durability might be a question, his fight IQ might be a question. But Carlos Ulberg is a spot where, you know, he made a rookie mistake against Kennedy and Nzechukwu, and people are crapping on his cardio now. But that man threw like something around like 200 some strikes, I want to say, in that fight. It was he attempted 227 total strikes and landed 146 of them, did Carlos Ulberg in that Nzechukwu fight. So I don't know if his cardio is even in the question. If he could just learn from that mistake and even attempt half of the output that he did in the first fight in the UFC, if he does that against Fabio Charron, even half of that volume, I think he wins this fight. Fabio Charron may have durability issues. He's coming in with a southpaw stance, which may or may not be effective against Carlos Ulberg, who's got very, very crafty striking. And the forward pressure of Fabio Charron, he constantly walks his opponents down. He might just be like a big punching bag against Carlos Ulberg, and that's how I see this fight happening. Unless Fabio Charron comes in with an entirely different game plan and starts working the grappling against Carlos Ulberg, he could use some of the experience that he has. He's got a ton more fights than Ulberg does. He's got the grappling advantage most likely. So if he does just completely 180 his game and go for the grappling, he could very well win this fight. Also, if Carlos Ulberg does not, learn from his first fight in the UFC and just goes in there and completely unloads against Fabio Charron and Charron somehow survives, it could be the same result as the first fight Carlos Ulberg had against Kennedy and Nzechukwu. But I think Carlos Ulberg is going to learn from that. I think he's got a much more athletic frame. I think his striking is clean, and I think Fabio Charron is going to fall victim to an inside-the-distance loss to Carlos Ulberg. Give me Carlos Ulberg by knockout in round 2 is my prediction for this fight. The problem is the betting odds, not exactly great either. Carlos Ulberg is way too big of a favorite in this spot, I'd say, for making a rookie mistake and having, only 4 fights. So let me just pull up the odds for this one because I thought they were a little interesting. Fabio Charron all the way as high as a plus 200 underdog in some spots. That's how little faith people have in this guy, only giving him about a third of a chance to win this fight. I just can't, at this number, at minus 240, minus 250, I cannot trust Carlos Ulberg to win this fight. But I will predict him to win by second round KO. Okay, up next, a lightweight fight that I'm very excited for. Man, this is a good card. Alex Hernandez taking on Renato Moicano. And, man, both guys are young. Both guys have good records. 13-4 Hernandez, 15-4-1 Moicano. Plus 145 underdog is Hernandez, the comeback favorite. Renato Moicano at minus 170. I mean, that's about right, I'd say. I honestly think that's about right. I don't think the line's too wide. Renato Moicano, again, getting called chinny by some people, I see. But it's only the guys, we're talking about Jose Aldo, talking about the Korean Zombie, we're talking about Rafael Fiziev. Then the other loss was to Brian Ortega by submission quite a while ago. Alexander Hernandez, You know, he busted onto the scene with a win that aged very well, knocking out Beneil Dariush with one punch, displaying his power upon his entry to the UFC. And then the hype kind of died off because, I mean, look, you have a very, very impressive victory like that, and then a washed-up Donald Cerrone schools you, you know, and finishes you in round 2. So it's like, I don't know. People started getting confused as to where to place this guy and where his ceiling was. And now he's been trading wins and losses for a while, but he came back with a short-notice opponent in Mike Breeden and made him look like a short-notice replacement and knocked him out in round 1 with an overhand right. So he righted that wrong. You know, if you're going to face somebody on short notice and you want to display your power and show where you stand in the division, he did just that. And at least he made that guy look like a can. And now he's fighting Renato Moicano. So he's back in the mix again at 155. And, man, do I want to take the shot on Alexander Hernandez here, because I like the guy, and if he's on and he's aggressive, you know, he's got offensive grappling in his back pocket that he can go to. The problem is Renato Moicano does as well, and Renato Moicano has used his grappling a lot more success in the UFC so far. I think Renato Moicano has more ways to win. I think he's got obviously he's got the physical advantages. I think he's got a more well-rounded game. But there is that chance that Hernandez comes in, switched on, and lights out in round 1, you know. But I just don't like taking a puncher's chance at the lightweight division. I just don't think that's a smart move. I'm not buying into Moicano being chinny. Would I be surprised if he gets iced by Hernandez? I mean, slightly, but I don't think that he's a big enough underdog. Even Hernandez by KO TKO is only like plus 200. Versus just taking a money line at plus 145. So that just shows you right there that the odds makers really think that his way to win is inside the distance. Both guys have a lot of finishes on their records. Both guys are finished on their records a lot too. So maybe the under 2.5 is a way to play this. But just off of a more well-rounded game, in my opinion, just skill for skill, I'm going to take Renato Moicano to win this fight. I'm not sure how he does it. Maybe by decision. Again, it's just hard to predict this fight, in my opinion. I think it's a very, like I said, I think the price is minus 170 and plus 145. I think they indicate a pretty accurate probability for both guys. But, man, I got to take Moicano to win this fight. I'll have him win by decision. I don't think I think Hernandez will slow down his game a little bit. I think Moicano will pick him apart. Moicano will probably go for some grappling in the fight and start getting Hernandez a little gun shy to open up with fear of getting taken down and controlled in the ground. So that's how I see this playing out. Give me Renato Moicano by decision. Okay, up next, another bantamweight fight between Ronny Lawrence and Mana Martinez. Two exciting young prospects. At least Mana Martinez was a little bit more exciting before his last fight, where he was expected by mostly everybody to finish the old Guido Canetti inside the distance after a string of knockouts on the regional scene. He comes in against a super, super old bantamweight and actually goes to a split decision with the guy. So that didn't look too good. Luckily, I did not have him inside the distance that fight. I had him parlayed with somebody else, but it was still a sweater after he got that split decision call. I thought it was a clear two rounds to 1, but either way, he was expected to win dominantly that fight. He did not, but nonetheless, Ronny Lawrence coming in, going to be a smaller frame, but relentless pressure, relentless takedowns. Only 2 fights so far in the UFC, 77% takedown accuracy in those 2 fights, with like about 20 takedowns altogether. So absolutely relentless. He stays busy on top, constant pressure, wears down his opponents, and he is a minus 300 favorite against the plus 240 coming back on Mana Martinez. That is a little ridiculous, a little wide, since we haven't seen Ronny Lawrence, his durability tested all that much. Mana Martinez is a nasty striking. He's got just a really, really powerful left hook. Is kind of like a signature strike that has been knocking out his opponents and giving them trouble. So round 1 for Martinez is live by knockout. I think, however, that you may see, again, common theme, you might see his striking look a little bit more hesitant against the takedown attempts of Ronny Lawrence. Mana Martinez does have nice sprawls, nice takedown defense that way, but if Ronny Lawrence gets a body lock, gets him against the cage, has the option to take him down in a multitude of ways, I have not seen Martinez with the tools to defend against that kind of relentless pressure. So give me Ronny Lawrence to win. I'm not sure if he does it inside the distance or if it's by decision, but I think he's going to look pretty dominant in this fight if he can avoid the early strikes of Martinez. So give me Ronny Lawrence to win. I'll say another round 3 TKO victory from ground and pound. Okay, another light heavyweight fight, 205 weight class with William Knight taking on Maxim Grishin, and this could be exciting, could be boring. And if Maxim Grishin wants to win this fight, I think he does make it boring and avoid the power shots of William Knight. Knight's going to be, of course, at 205, he's going to be the smaller man in the cage, 5'10", 73-inch reach against Maxim Grishin, who's pretty large, 6'3", with what we got, 76-inch reach. So, yeah, I mean, looking at Maxim Grishin, when I do the tape study for this fight, I forget how long this guy's been around in the MMA game. I mean, he took on a lot of names as far back as like 2008, I think he made his professional debut. I mean, you're talking about he even lost to Shane Del Rosario. I'm pretty sure that guy died like 10 years ago. So it just goes to show you how long this guy's been in the game. William Knight, although his professional record is 11-2, he did have a long, extended amateur career as well. The guy's got some grappling. The guy's got pretty accurate striking and some power in his hands, does William Knight. But overall, I mean, not looking that impressive in his past couple of fights. I mean, he took on Fabio Charron, knocked him out. When I think he was losing the majority of that fight until he landed that knockout shot. Then his last fight against Alonzo Menefield, I mean, it really wasn't that impressive of a fight. I mean, he was able to pretty much win just jockeying against the cage, getting control time. So, I guess it was a win, but it wasn't that impressive. I think Maxim Grishin is going to have the tools to handle William Knight. Maxim Grishin seems to have problems, kind of getting the fight to the ground these days. But I think with William Knight, who might, as the fight goes on and he wears out, if William Knight can't find that knockout shot, I think he'll succumb to some of the ground game of Maxim Grishin or just get eaten apart from, just rangy strikes of the bigger man. I think Maxim Grishin has just a huge experience edge in this fight. He's probably faced, he's definitely faced guys with the physique of William Knight. William Knight, if he could get this, at a close range fight and be able to press Maxim Grishin against the cage and win time there, kind of like he did against Menefield, maybe, but I just don't think Maxim Grishin's the type of guy that's going to allow that to happen to him. I mean, you're talking about a guy that was hanging with Dustin Jacoby recently. He's just had a long string of fights with guys that I think are just a little bit higher caliber than William Knight. And even though he's getting up there in age at 205, I'm not too concerned about that. I think he'll still have enough in the tank to avoid the power shot of William Knight and probably grind out a decision. Now, both of these guys have finishing capability. Their resumes are sprinkled with both losses and wins by finish. And fight doesn't go to decision is sitting at plus money currently, like plus 105, plus 115. That's a little bit enticing as a way to bet this fight, since I think there's some high variance as to who would win. It's a closer fight than the line indicates, minus 170 for Maxim Grishin. I probably want this to be more like a pick'em fight, honestly. But I do think that Maxim Grishin has got more ways to win this fight. So give me Maxim Grishin to win a pretty boring decision. Up next, flyweight fight between Matt Schnell and Alex Perez. And my God, if I have to do, tape study and, looking at that betting odds of this fight one more time, I'm probably going to scream, lose my mind. This fight's been scheduled quite a few times. And the most recent one, Matt Schnell pulled out once again for some weight cut issues. So, man, speaking of fights that might get canceled on this card, I'm not even sure we're going to get a chance to see this one this week. But either way, every single time this fight gets canceled, Alex Perez becomes a bigger favorite on the betting line. So he's already up to minus 400. Crazy. Plus 290, the comeback underdog price for Matt Schnell. Matt Schnell, durability issues all over the place. At flyweight, he's getting finished by strikes. Pretty dangerous in his own right on the ground, though. When he does get taken down, he's had some triangle submissions. He's pretty dangerous, pretty crafty off of his back. So Alex Perez will have to look out for that, especially coming off of his last fight where he took on Davison Figueiredo on short notice. You know, he would have been an idiot if he didn't try to take it to the ground as soon as possible. He did, but he got his neck snatched up by a guillotine round 1 and lost that fight. So that's what he's coming off of. Matt Schnell, slightly bigger, 5'8", longer reach. But, man, he surely does not use that very much. He's been taken out by some pretty questionable strikes. Alex Perez has got nasty leg kicks, as we've seen in his the fight before the Figueiredo fight against Jussier Formiga. Yeah, and he goes to the wrestling quite often, so he's got a very well-rounded game. His striking looks better and better. He's able to mix in the groundwork as well. I imagine that he'll be pretty cautious on the ground. He knows that, you know, he can't get submitted again. He knows that Matt Schnell is going to have that, you know, looking for submissions on the ground. I think that Matt Schnell's durability is not going to hold up again, though. I think at some point Alex Perez will get this fight to the ground. Matt Schnell will probably go for some sort of submission attempt off of his back. And in going for that submission attempt, I think Alex Perez will pretty much pound his face off. So I'm going to call it ground and pound TKO for Alex Perez, either rounds 1 or round 2. As far as the betting odds for this fight, I mean, I can't touch a minus 400. I mean, we're talking about, what, I mean, an 80% probability that he wins this fight. That's getting a little bit crazy to bet on, so, and then I'm just not going to bet an underdog price in Matt Schnell. There's just no way. I don't see enough ways for him to win this fight, so probably staying off of this as far as betting, but taking Perez to win. Okay, up next, women's flyweight bout, the only women's fight on the entire card, which I find kind of strange, but either way, it's Roxanne Modafferi versus Casey ONeill. This is the complete two opposite scenarios, two ends of the spectrum in women's flyweight. Casey ONeill, 24 years old, 8-0 record, just starting her career basically against Roxanne Modafferi. This is her retirement fight. She is 25-20. My God, what a record. And, you know, slightly larger at 5'7". The reach should be the same. 39 years old, Roxanne Modafferi. She had a long career. She's fought, I mean, one of the pioneers, you know, in the UFC women's divisions, honestly. And she has cashed as an underdog in a few spots. I mean, the most recent ones, I believe, are like Andrea Lee, able to secure 2 rounds to 1 there. And this fight kind of reminds me, this is like a deja vu flashback fight of Macy Barber, when Macy Barber was undefeated and the next hot prospect. And Roxanne Modafferi was able to control her for like 3+ minutes every single round and, you know, spoil the party of Macy Barber, give her her first L. Could she do the same against Casey ONeill? I think she definitely could. And the odds are, once again, you know, minus 380 for Casey ONeill and plus 290 on Roxanne Modafferi. Now, obviously, Modafferi would be the, you know, with the record she has, the deficiencies in the striking she has, she'd be the underdog regardless. But I'm pretty sure this is even more juiced for Casey ONeill since she is undefeated, and this is well known that this is the retirement fight for Roxanne Modafferi. So a lot of times these people are about to retire. You know, are they training as hard? Is one foot out the door already? If the going gets tough in the fight, will they just, you know, kind of know in the back of their head that there is no future for them in this sport anymore? Maybe, but my God, would it not be kind of like Roxanne Modafferi-ish for her to come in here and once again spoil a newcomer in the women's division, you know, prove that she really isn't a joke as she's kind of made out to be? Man, I could see it happening, but 25% takedown defense, atrocious for Roxanne Modafferi. Her striking is somewhat improved, but still, you know, just looks, you know, just short of rudimentary, honestly. And 50% takedown defense, which is very, very good so far for Casey ONeill. So I think Casey ONeill will secure the top control time. She's pretty ferocious as far as her pace. So as long as she can keep a good cardio pace against Roxanne Modafferi, I think she cruises to a decision here. So as much as I'd like to take that stab on Roxanne Modafferi at plus 290, I don't think I'm going to bet on a retiring fighter. So give me Casey ONeill to secure a decision. All right, we got a heavyweight fight between Jared Vandermeer and Andrei Arlovski, man. Arlovski is probably one of my, I'm an old school guy. I've been watching this sport for decades. So now that Overeem is out of the UFC, I think Arlovski might be one of my favorite fighters currently fighting on the roster. I mean, the guy was the UFC heavyweight champion. I think when he was 25, he beat Tim Sylvia. That's 18 years ago now. So 43 years old. I mean, the guy's fought everybody, 32-20 record. Coming in against Jared Vanderer, the younger guy at 29, who, large man, 6'4", 80-inch reach. He can match those attributes of Andrei Arlovski. And the issue is Jared Vanderer usually has been losing and getting dominated and finished by guys that are able to mix in takedowns against him, grind him against the cage, tire him out on the floor, and then pound him out there. Andrei Arlovski really doesn't do that these days is the issue. He's kind of a rangy striker. He's got very, very good significant strike accuracy. He's got just a decent amount of output against his opponents over 3 rounds. And he just sticks on the outside, and he's got very, very good significant strike defense as well. So he's not really getting hit. He's getting more strikes off than he's receiving, basically, in a lot of these fights. But he has become kind of like a low-level gatekeeper. Like, he's kind of like, I mean, obviously, I guess a gatekeeper in the UFC heavyweight division, by definition, is low-level, because there's such a disparity between the top 5 and the rest of the UFC heavyweight contenders. But obviously, he's been beating a much lower level of opposition than he's used to. But, I mean, the guy is in his 40s, so I guess we'll cut him a break. But, I mean, he's winning over Carlos Felipe, Chase Sherman. He has that one loss to Tom Aspinall. Again, that's a guy who passed the gatekeeper test. And then he's got wins over Tanner Boser, which is a very close fight, and Philippe Lins. So, you know, not a high level of competition. I think that Jared Vanderer falls within that level of competition that he's able to beat, though. I mean, Jared Vanderer, what do we expect him to go in here and knock out Andrei Arlovski? I mean, you know, Andrei Arlovski, 43 years old. I mean, maybe you can do it. The guy's been cracked before, but he's usually cracked and finished by a much higher level of competition. But, you know, his career's going to come to an end at some point, so maybe I could buy that. But, I mean, we're not looking at, we have no, you're talking about a guy who was kind of landing at will against Justin Tafa and wasn't able to finish him. So I don't really see Jared Vanderer with a path to outpoint Arlovski. I don't see him, you know, maybe the Hail Mary shot on him finishing Arlovski in the distance. But I think Arlovski is just kind of finding a way to, kind of like Alistair Overeem at the end of his career. He's just found a way to win fights. So if you don't think the Arlovski team is not eyeing up that 20% takedown defense, absolutely atrocious, of Jared Vanderer, you know, I think they're probably eyeing that up. And if things are going poorly in the feet, they can have that in their back pocket and get him against the cage, take him down, and win minutes, you know, in top control time that way. So I think that if things are going to go well on the feet for Arlovski, he'll keep it standing. I think if they go poorly, he'll take it to the ground. And I think he just knows how to win fights at this point in his career. And give me Arlovski to win a decision victory over Jared Vanderer. Now, the line is actually okay on this. Minus 145 Arlovski, plus 125 on Jared Vanderer as the underdog. You know, I mean, I think you could go wider even with that Andrei Arlovski line just because he's got such experience. But at 43 years old, I think this line is kind of exactly where it is. I'm not rushing to bet Arlovski at minus 145 just solely because of his age, you know. But I do think he wins this fight. I'm pretty confident in it. I think he wins this fight by unanimous decision. Okay, up next, the lightweight bout between Bobby Green taking on Nasrat Haqparast. Haqparast just coming off of that step up in competition against Dan Hooker, which he lost very, very decisively. That was a tough ask for him. Dan Hooker, the size, the skill, just everything just kind of built up. It was just a big step up in competition for Haqparast. We kind of got to see where Haqparast's ceiling was a little bit. But he's only 26 years old, so maybe we can see a little bit of improvement from him now. Bobby Green, the opposite end of the spectrum, 35 years old at lightweight still, and looking pretty good. I mean, he was given that layup of an opponent in Ally Quinta in his last fight. Absolutely just got him out of there very, very early in the fight. Quinta looked nothing like the Quinta back in his prime, so, you know, that was to be expected, but it was nice to see that Bobby Green was able to take advantage of the opportunity and not drag out a long fight against you know, a guy way past his prime. So the tail of the tape kind of is the same here, 5'10" for each guy, 71 and 72-inch reach. It's really the age is the big difference here. Nasrat, the slight underdog at plus 120. minus 140 favorite for Bobby Green. So I like that this line is closing up a little bit closer. I think Bobby Green has a lot of the tools to win this fight. The only problem is he gets robbed in a lot of decisions where he does a lot of good work outstriking his opponents. Thiago Moises, the Fiziev fight, I mean, both very, very close fights that, the judges did not give him the nod in those outings. So got to be careful for that. If it goes to the decision, sometimes he drops the ball on those, but he hasn't gone to his wrestling a little bit. He's got very, very good takedowns, good output on those, good accuracy on those. And if his opponent is lacking in that area, he'll do it. Like if things are getting a little stale on the feet, he'll go to the wrestling, go for the control time. And somebody who doesn't wrestle at all or show any offensive wrestling threat like Nasrat Haqparast, maybe Bobby Green will go for it. I think that might be the deciding factor in this fight. If he can mix in striking output, at least match the striking output of Nasrat Haqparast. I mean, both of these guys actually land more than they receive as far as significant strike percentages go. So both guys pretty defensively sound. Both guys have good striking accuracy and output so far. Bobby Green, obviously, that's over a larger sample size as well. So that's a little bit more impressive just because of his experience. If he can mix in the wrestling, I think he takes this fight. One of the looks on this one is fight goes to the decision is minus 185 currently. I think that's actually pretty good. Both guys display durability. Both guys display a little bit of patience. And I think we're getting a little bit of a discount on that line because Nasrat does have power, and Bobby Green showed a first-round finish in his last fight. So might be a discounted spot right now in a Bobby Green fight to get fight goes to the decision at minus 185. That might be the only way I'll get this fight. Like I said, I'd like to take Bobby Green and even him by decision, but he somehow finds a way to get robbed out of these split decisions. So I'd be very, very worried with a bet on Bobby Green that it goes the opposite way on the scorecards. But give me Bobby Green by decision. Up next, the bantamweight fight between Kyler Phillips and Marcelo Rojo. And poor Marcelo Rojo, man. He's had a lot of canceled bouts in the past year. He should have been able to fight, but finally somebody to take him on, and unfortunately it's Kyler Phillips, who is better pretty much everywhere in my opinion. I think as for a guy who has a lot of success on the ground, I think his striking is actually very, very creative at times. He's a powerful guy. Better striking accuracy than Marcelo Rojo. Better defensive stats than Marcelo Rojo. He goes to the wrestling. He's got that in his back pocket. I mean, Marcelo Rojo's got a very clean record, 16-7. Not bad, but a lot of questionable competition there in the Combate, that regional scene down in the south there. So, and the one time he ran into UFC competition against John Castaneda, he got finished by submission. So, clear path to victory for Kyler Phillips is to ground this guy, work the output on top, win minutes in the control positions on top, and he can probably find a submission at some point. Kyler Phillips is very, very competent on the ground. This is a short and sweet breakdown. I think Kyler Phillips cuts right through him and gets the finish inside the distance. Unfortunately, the line is just kind of unbettable. I mean, he's already passing, going like minus 400, minus 410 I've seen on some books. The comeback plus 270, plus 300 on Marcelo Rojo. Not enough skills, not enough path to victory for me to take an underdog shot on Marcelo Rojo. But Kyler Phillips, that line is just way too juiced for, you're talking about 80% probability rate in him winning. It might be accurate. He might look like a minus 1,000 favorite in here, but it's just unbettable. So let me get Kyler Phillips by second round submission. Okay, we're up to Jared Cannonier versus Derek Brunson. And man, this is a tough one for me because I've been riding the Derek Brunson money train for a while now. I mean, I started on this money train against Edmund Shabazian. Got Derek Brunson at almost 3-1 odds as an underdog. I thought that was a clear choice and cash on that. He goes on to just absolutely ragdoll Kevin Holland. Cashed on that. Goes in against a fat, sloppy-looking Darren Till as an underdog. Cashed on that. And am I going to jump off of the Derek Brunson money train now against Jared Cannonier? No, I'm going to stay on the Derek Brunson money train. I think he wins this fight. I think he wins by decision. And I think if he doesn't, he at least is going to go out trying. So I love a guy in Derek Brunson who you just know what he's going to do at this point. He's got amazing wrestling, amazing takedown accuracy. He just is relentless with it. Jared Cannonier on paper has got pretty good takedown defense. He's got 62% takedown defense. 37 years old, 5'11", actually the younger man by a year, which is surprising. And the reach is the same. But, yeah, his takedown defense, he doesn't really have to use it a whole lot. I mean, a lot of that has been beefed up now. Kevin Gastelum went for, like, I think 8 takedowns, whiffed all of them. So, you know, Derek Brunson, striking not great, and he's always very, very, you know, questionable, like kind of like the Kevin Holland fight, where if he's not getting a takedown, if it's on the feet, I mean, Kevin Holland was actually tagging him up and hurting him, making it look a little bit questionable. So he's always looking a little bit awkward on the feet against some of these better strikers. So obviously I'll be nervous. Obviously I think that Jared Cannonier could take his head off here. But I just trust in Derek Brunson to once again come in as an underdog, play Matador, and, you know, get these takedowns and just frustrate the heck out of Jared Cannonier. Cannonier will try to work back to his feet. His arms will get heavy, filled with blood, probably won't be as powerful. And, you know, it's been a while since we've seen Jared Cannonier even get a finish in a fight. So I'm going to take Derek Brunson by decision in this fight. I mean, and not to mention Derek Brunson has been... you know, he exhausted himself in the Holland fight, taking him down for 5 rounds. This is only a 3-round fight. So I think he's got the cardio for a 3-round fight. I think he's got the wrestling ability, obviously, to manhandle Cannonier in this spot. The only thing I don't like is the odds. I mean, I'm used to getting a better underdog price than Derek Brunson. Now I'm only getting plus 145 on him. And by decision, I'm only seeing like plus 225, plus 250. I was hoping for something closer to like plus 300 again, but I mean, I guess the bookies are going to figure it out eventually. But yeah, I like a guy who goes for the grappling, a guy who commits to the bit. And yeah, I'm going to ride this Brunson money train until the wheels fall off. So give me Derek Brunson by decision. Okay, what a co-main event this is. Derek Lewis versus Tai Tuivasa. Oh man, what makes me nervous about this fight is the fact that every time that there's like one of these matchups where it's like, oh man, this is guaranteed to be violence. Oh, who's going to get knocked out first? Oh, wow. It's like, it might be the most boring fight in the world. I mean, look, we just had Thiago Santos versus Johnny Walker, where, you know, there's no way this goes to decision. This is going to be an amazing fight. And then it ends up being the most boring fight ever. Same with Derek Lewis against Francis Ngannou a few years ago. So anytime I see this, I have that weird feeling in my stomach, but it's Tai Tuivasa. I have faith that, and this is part of why I think he's not going to win this fight. I have faith that with the crowd, and I think he's such a showman and a crowd pleaser that if it starts to get boring and Derek Lewis is doing nothing and Tai Tuivasa is just like, you know, spamming leg kicks here and there, trying to work his way in the guard, if the fans start booing and Tai Tuivasa is like, oh shit, man, the fans aren't happy, I think he's just going to rush in there with his chin open, go for something crazy, and get countered by Derek Lewis and knocked out. So that's kind of how I see this fight going. It's kind of a stupid crystal ball take, but I mean, what else can you do? It's such a high variance weight class in the heavyweight division, and 2 guys that are pretty much kill or be killed. Derek Lewis is pretty durable. I mean, he's been finished, but he never really gets knocked out clean. He kind of just gives up. So that is on the table, probably. You know, sometimes he gets, you know, the Cyril Gane fight, he just straight up quit. Once he realized he wasn't going to win that fight and land that heavy, you know, that heavy strike that put out Cyril Gane, he just kind of just got kicked in the belly and just gave up. Same with the Mark Hunt fight from a few years ago. You know, if this fight does, for some reason, happen to go to the scorecards, who can we expect to have the better output here? Derek Lewis? I don't think so. I think Tai Tuivasa probably has the diversity of strikes, the more activity, and if it goes to decision, he's been proven to win those decisions sometimes, like the Arlovski fight. You know, he at least made it to decision against Blagoy Ivanov, even though he lost. So, I mean, both of these guys have been able to survive, you know, 3 rounds of cardio at least, but I don't see it happening in this fight. I think the best bet is... I think Derek Lewis wins this fight by knockout. I think his power is something different than Tai Tuivasa's. I think his durability is better than Tai Tuivasa's. And I think Tai is going to eventually, when this gets boring, I think he'll try to make it exciting and get a little reckless and hasty with his approach. So give me Derek Lewis by knockout in round 1. As far as the odds go in this spot, you're looking at Tai Tuivasa as a plus 155 favorite. Or I'm sorry, a plus 155 underdog. Derek Lewis, the minus 180 favorite and climbing. You could kind of amend those lines by, I'm seeing Derek Lewis by knockout at minus 135. I mean, that's okay, but I don't know. I probably want plus money on a prop like that. Plus 250 to come back on Tai Tuivasa by knockout. Again, I'm not really liking that too much just because like I said, the durability of Lewis is pretty decent. The other angle I was looking at was if it does happen to go to decision and Tai Tuivasa had more output, plus 500 I'm seeing on Tai Tuivasa by points. Again, definitely not juicy enough for me. I probably need more than that for this fight. It's so high variance. So, and I don't like any of the time props either. So I'm probably going to stay off of this from a betting perspective. Just sit back and enjoy the fight. And yeah, like I said, I'm sticking with Derek Lewis by KO round 1. Okay, we did it. Main event time all the way to Israel Adesanya versus Robert Whitaker 2. Israel Adesanya now defending champion against the guy who he took the belt from, Robert Whitaker, former champion of the middleweight division. Worked his way back up, kind of the slow route to get back to a title shot here. Took a little bit of time off. Ended up facing, who did he face? He faced Darren Till, Jared Cannonier, and Kelvin Gastelum. And in his last fight against Kelvin Gastelum, he reached a career high of both significant strikes and takedowns in the same fight. 150 significant strikes and 4 takedowns that he mixed in over a 5-round fight against Kelvin Gastelum. Absolutely schooled Kelvin Gastelum, which is a good warm-up fight for Israel Adesanya, a guy who, is super... You couldn't find two guys that are like further apart as far as physical stats go than Kelvin Gastelum and Israel Adesanya. So sure, Whitaker was able to school and hit some career highs against a 5'9" former, a guy who should be fighting at welterweight in Gastelum against Adesanya, who's 6'4" with an 80-inch reach. So you can take from that what you will. I think Whitaker's going to have to mix together a perfect game plan to face Adesanya in this rematch. He's going to have to mix in the grappling, kind of like a Jan Blachowicz game plan. The problem is Jan Blachowicz was so much heavier and stronger than Adesanya. Just a guy who could probably fight at heavyweight if he wanted to is Jan Blachowicz. So he outweighed Adesanya in that fight by a large margin, muscled him around, was able to, with the threat of the takedown, beat him on the feet. And that's what Robert Whitaker's going to have to do. I mean, he's going to have to kind of... The knock on Robert Whitaker in the last fight was that he was too reckless, rushed in, and got knocked out by Izzy. He's going to have to, gain some respect early in this rematch against him. He's going to have to gain some respect, cracking through the 80% takedown defense rating of Adesanya. He's going to have to somehow find a way to challenge him that way and have a threat of a takedown in this fight. Otherwise, what is he doing? That's the one big change he has to make is try to get some grappling going. And if he gains some respect to the grappling, Adesanya is going to inevitably get back to his feet, and maybe Robert Whitaker can, fake the level change and start throwing some overhands. He'll hide the high kick with his hands sometimes. I don't know. He's just going to have to really mix things together in the most perfect way possible. And Adesanya is going to have one of his low volume nights. Sometimes Adesanya has low volume nights. When he fought Yoel Romero, it was like an embarrassing low amount of output from Adesanya in that fight because he was so worried about the power of Yoel Romero. So you're going to have the perfect storm for Whitaker to win this fight. I think he's going to have to catch Adesanya in a bad night, and he's going to have a good night. And I just think that's just too much to ask. Adesanya is sitting at a minus 280 price tag. Whitaker plus 225. I've locked in a bet on Adesanya by decision. I got, I think, plus 165 or 170 on that earlier in the week. So that's the one bet that I've locked in so far on this fight. Nothing too crazy, like a unit stab on it. I just think that I think in reality, after all of the things that Whitaker should be doing, I think in reality he's going to slow down the pace of this fight, take his time warming up in round 1 and round 2. I think it'll be a longer, less dominant performance by Adesanya, but I think he'll just pick apart Whitaker with his length and his better kickboxing over 5 rounds. It'll be a decision fight, and I think that'll be the story of the fight. So Israel Adesanya, and still middleweight champion, is my prediction by decision. Okay, there you have it. All 15 fights broken down for UFC 271, Adesanya versus Whitaker 2. It was a lot of fun, a lot of tape study, a lot of preparation for this fight card. So we'll see what fights stay intact for the weekend. Good luck in all your betting action. If you enjoyed the content, leave a like, leave a sub, share this video, and yeah, good luck. Let's make some money this weekend.